Director of the Center for Cultural Liberation, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you all for joining us today on a panel discussion on health in Black communities. I would like to thank the Black History Month Planning Committee and all who helped make our events possible throughout the month of February. We hope that you will enjoy today's panel and join us for our last two events this week. Tomorrow, Friday, February 26th, we'll be hosting a virtual music and food festival, which traditionally has been held on campus, but we'll hold it virtually. We've hired a DJ and we're going to raffle off gift cards to Black-owned businesses at the end of the night. And then on Sunday, University Ministry will be hosting a gospel mass at 4 p.m. So today we have four wonderful panelists who will share about themselves and some remarks regarding their experience and work with health in Black communities. After the remarks, we will open up the floor for a discussion that will be facilitated by my colleague, Dr. Tamara Bland, who is an assistant professor in the Nursing Bora College of Health Sciences. So our panelists today are Chris Smith, Director of Health and Counseling at Kenyon College. We have Sherry Wick, who is a licensed clinical professional counselor and owner of Holistically Divine Counseling. We have Gabrielle Hardin, who is a third-year graduate student in counseling psychology with a concentration in Latinx mental health at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and a counselor at Dominican. And lastly, we have Jessica Joseph, who is a pre-medical post-baccalaureate student at Dominican University. She is a COVID contact tracer at DU and a pharmacy technician for North Shore Health Center. Thank you all for being here, and I'll go ahead and open it up for the panelists.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having us join today. As stated, my name is Chris Smith, Director of Health and Counseling at Kenyon College. I go by pronouns he, him, his. My journey to health was one connected to a passion for public service. I got into the health and wellness field just because of an interest as a child, and it evolved as I began my academic matriculation. Prior to coming to Kenyon, I worked for 10 years for the Centers for Disease Control. 7 of those years, I was assigned to the state of Michigan's immunization program. 2 years before that, I was assigned to the Kentucky Department for Health and Human Services. And my route to higher education has been very unique, primarily through public health agencies of the federal government. But I really just, at the core of it, I want to help people. As a director of health and counseling, I feel like I have a unique opportunity to really impact the lives of students who identify as Black, Indigenous, or persons of colors, and really all students who represent various marginalized populations here on our campus. Really what we're trying to do here at Kenyon College, and I will kind of give high-level comments so that we can ask questions later, but we really want to change the landscape of what services are available to students as they're completing college, where there's a changing landscape of what's happening right now in terms of student support needs. There are clearly global atrocities happening against persons who identify as BIPOC, both those individuals and their communities. There's a viral pandemic that just won't seem to end. And then we also have to think about the marathon forward of creating systems of wellness, which includes prevention, treatment, healing, and empowerment. So one of the concepts that we're really thinking about here at Kenyon College is an approach to radical wellness forward. And really that has a three-pronged approach. We want to be very intentional about professional pipelines. We want to build up the foundation of prevention, and then we want to make some intentional investments. And as we think about the professional pipeline, one of the things that I recognize going into this job is that we just don't have enough persons of color in this field, whether it be health and or behavioral health. So how do we make these opportunities ones that persons actively seek out or are actively brought to them as they're considering entering college, so that they can see that it's a path forward that has a wide variety of growth opportunities? As an employer, we also have to think about how do we intentionally target and recruit and retain those persons. Where we live here in Ohio, I consider it pre-Amish territory. There ain't no Black people here. So how do I get Black people to come here and stay here in a county where persons who identify as BIPOC make up an approximate 1.5% of the county population? And then as a supervisor, when those persons are recruited and retained to my staff, how do I continue to help them grow? And one of the things we talk about here at our center is the CEO to CFO conversation mentality. So I've got this thing on my wall and you probably can't see it, but it says a CFO, a chief financial officer, asks the chief executive officer, what happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave us? And then the CEO says, what happens if we don't and they stay? So we are really of a growth mindset here, that as providers come to our building, we may have them for 20 years, we may have them for 2 years, but while they are here, we want to make sure they are actively growing. As a public health guy, prevention is core to what I do. And so as I think about the providers that work here in our building and serve our students and offer compassionate care, we want to make sure that we are empowering them with skill sets to help our students so that by the time they make it into that clinical seat, that their crises maybe are a little bit mitigated or less than what they could be. So how do we provide intentional strategies that help people cope and become resilient and overcome the trauma of silence and various other things that are happening in their communities? So prevention is really key. And then lastly, intentional investments. A lot of people want to claim allyship, but it costs. It costs time, it costs money, it costs energy. And from an institutional standpoint, it costs dollars. And we need to really advocate for those dollars to be invested so that once again, we can help with some of the skill building that is for our professional staff and our students. And then also make sure that even if things sometimes aren't connected to the clear mission, that we can make those investments because it'll support those who are connected to what we are doing. So I'm very happy to be with you all. I'm sure we'll get some questions later, but thank you very much.
Well, I don't have all of those amazing words. I am Sherry Wick. I am the owner of Holistically Divine Counseling. It's my private practice, my baby, or my second baby. And I also am the psychologist in residence at Dominican. I have had time at Dominican about 5 years before I left, and now I'm back because I love DU. And both of my background is in mental health counseling as well as in career development or career counseling. So during my internship and during my time in my master's program at Benedictine, I was able to get the best of both worlds, both the counseling and mental health, behavioral health, and in career development. And the biggest piece for me is helping individuals, specifically people of color, communities of color, to know and to establish their goals, their dreams, and make them, attainable. Creating a space where they get to come into, whether it's the Zoom platform or one day when we get back to meeting in person and saying, this is what I want to do. And then us figuring out how you get there. There is no reason we cannot live full lives. And that's a big part of my mission and vision. We have the ability to, it's just getting more people to support us in doing that. There are barriers, absolutely. And it's figuring out how to maneuver through those barriers. So I think of a wall that has these little holes through it that we're gonna get through to make sure that you're living a quality life. So in my private practice, I incorporate faith, which is something that I am learning more and more people, specifically Black people, are appreciating, because it is not the religion that I'm talking about. It's talking about and working with people to help them understand you can incorporate your faith and beliefs and what that looks like in your own mental health. Again, because that's a piece of individuals that I've been working with that they feel like is missing. And we want to make sure we're filling those voids with something that's healthy and that brings you wholeness. So happy to answer questions when we get down to it.
Yes, I can totally relate to that. So I just want to thank Jacky for allowing me to be here first and foremost. And even thinking of like how I got to this point, I have to give honor to God and putting pillars in my life when it comes to my family, my friends, my supervisors, mentors, anybody who had, I've encountered with, I say can definitely contribute to why I am here today. I am a 3-year student at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, where my concentration is Latinx mental health. And the reason why that concentration is very dear to me, because it's not just specific to the Latinx community, but essentially BIPOC, honoring that the history that we all have experienced and using that within the therapy session and taking the aspects that our ancestors have done, the benefits, the downfalls, the upsides, and using that to formulate treatment for us to move forward. And it was radical. It spoke to me as a Black woman. It was even healing throughout the structure of the concentration. So I just want to, give thanks to Dr. Adames and Dr. Chavez, the mentors of the concentration. When I think about like how I even got here, Essentially, it was just learning myself and learning what Blackness meant in America. And through that, learning myself and the things I love about myself, it fueled this fire in me to want to do that to other BIPOC individuals and to externalize the issue and not internalize the issue, and using what already works for them to, pretty much promote their wellness. And Andre Lloyd said it beautifully, that when BIPOC, when we treat ourselves right, mentally, physically, spiritually, in whatever way, that's how you can dismantle white supremacy, because it doesn't want us. It wants us to view ourselves as inferior. So if we take care of ourselves in any way that does not hurt ourselves or others around us, that's resistance, that's radical.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jessica Joseph, and I'm a pre-medical post-baccalaureate student at Dominican University, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited. Thank you, Jackie, for this wonderful opportunity. And today I was just hoping to talk about health in the Black community. I want to go over the Black census, how our population is not so big yet. We're dying from high blood pressure, diabetes, and stroke, COVID-19 more than any other race. So I did want to bring that up and just some solutions to that, hopefully. And I got my undergrad from Indiana University in 2019. And I want to be a doctor because I think the medical field needs to see me. They need to see a young Black woman. It will encourage people to trust the medical system again. We've been through a lot. The Tuskegee syphilis scandal that they had, and that's Henrietta Lack, and we don't trust the medical system. We have a stigma against it. So I think the Black community needs to see me, and I'm going for it. I'm going all the way, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing your journeys and your experience. I also am honored to be here, to be amongst you and to be part of this as a woman of color, as a nurse and a healthcare provider. And so I understand a lot of what you said. So I guess I want to start the session with sort of following up with what Chris and Sherry sort of alluded to, right? We know prevention is key, but can you discuss some of the major barriers for our BIPOC patients related to health, and health including mental health as well?
So I'll jump in. So as an alum of Tuskegee University, I think I'm very familiar with the Tuskegee syphilis study that was conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service, which is now connected to the Centers for Disease Control. And I think that lack of trust of our healthcare system really serves as a critical kind of tipping point that creates a lot of health disparities, because when we think about how health information makes it to Black communities, if we don't have enough medical providers representing us, then persons are less likely to receive maybe some of that preventative care that would help them make intentional decisions. One of the things that we started here at Kenyon College, and we really hope to invest in a lot more after the pandemic, was a wellness campaign. It was called Eat Well, Sleep Well, Be Well. Eating, sleeping, and being well. Those are very core things that people so often forget to invest in for the sake of getting another paper published or doing something that brings them an accolade. What we were seeing here at Kenyon College when I first started here is we've got brilliant students who are literally wiping themselves out and from exhaustion. And some of them, as soon as they cross that stage and get those amazing jobs we want them to have, some of them were suffering emotional and mental health breakdowns. And so all of the things that they've worked for are now not necessarily for naught, but significantly delayed because some of the strategies that they've incorporated in their life just aren't sustainable. And so we have to get back to the basics sometime. As a In my family, you can't throw a rock without hitting a preacher. So faith is huge in my family, but also faith sometimes can conflict with the basics of things of taking care of yourself. And my dad used to say, people have to learn to put feet on your prayer. So, go and talk to that counselor, go and talk to that psychologist. That is something that your faith will empower you to do so that you can be your best self. So I'm going to stop there because I can go on and on about this, but I want to hear what the others have to say.
Chris, I love that. And I'm gonna, can I take that? Can I take it? And then, okay, I'm gonna put your name on it. So the just to add to, not seeing people that look like us, also, insurance, healthcare. So not having access to insurance, just the insurance providers. So that also leads into employment, adequate employment. So people don't even know to reach out, because oftentimes you hear counseling, you hear mental health, and you hear a lot of money too. It's almost like mental health, a lot of money, the dollar signs, right? And then and support, a lot of money. So oftentimes people, don't even reach out because right away it's costly. And so finding more organizations, so having resources where people can go to these organizations and say, I'm in need of this, or I'm looking for support in this area, and providing, a list of organizations that have support that is at a cost that people can take advantage of. So sliding scales, people don't know about sliding scales, and people don't, know oftentimes just to ask for that. There's a fear behind asking for that. So we have to be out in the field promoting. I love that eat well, sleep well, be well. We don't hear a lot of that. When you hear of mental health, people think crazy, or people think institution, things like that really hinder folks from really knowing the truth. So.
And I'm feeling the vibes here. It's just like everybody's helping everybody build to what the main meaning is. Yes. And just to echo that, even taking it a step further, right? Black mental health, BIPOC mental health used to be criminalized. If you see a Black person in the middle of the street hollering or saying they hear voices in their head, no one's stopping to be like, hey, sir, you good? You want some assistance, compared to if a white individual did the same thing. And our institutions we're supporting, right? Counseling, any type of help, used to be a system where it was what's the word? Used to show that Black people were inferior and Black people were animalistic and they weren't deemed worthy of basic human rights. And so we have to also realize that we have a bigger weight on us because we represent the BIPOC community, that if we are saying any type of narrative that goes with the all lives matter type of movement, that can even be even more damaging, because someone that looks like me does not say is making me feel worse about my own self. And we share the same community. So for me as a counselor and counseling in general, who are people of color counselors, it's very essential that we have to pretty much call it like it is. We are a part of the same system, but we are in this position that we can be radical and move things in sessions and even outside of sessions with organizations, and doing stuff like this where it can somewhat combat that and really invite BIPOC communities to be like, yes, we know the past and we can honor that past, but let's kind of do some different work now.
Yes, and to build off what you're saying, Gabrielle, I think it's important to educate the Black community. I feel like they really don't know, like even what Chris was saying, eat well, that's very important for diabetes. That's killing us. We're not eating right. We need to really educate people to eat right. We need to educate them about high blood pressure, even the vaccines, like for COVID. We're dying from these we're dying just as faster. We're dying faster than the white people, and we only make up 13% of the population. So I think educating them is like most important most important, because I think the lack of knowledge of how serious this is what's really keeping them away from the doctor. And also, now that we are going through this pandemic, everything is technology based. So the whole no transportation, because even in the pharmacy, a lot of my patients did get dropped off. Nowadays, you can do telehealth appointments. People need to know about this stuff. Like, you can get on the phone and have an appointment for your mental health with a psychologist, whatever you need. You can get on the phone and get it done. So I think that's really important. We need to educate them on telehealth and eating right, and what high blood pressure even is, and what glucose in your blood even is, because that's what's killing us.
Thank you, Jessica. What I appreciate is that each of you have alluded to and openly spoken about the racism that affects the Black community in health, poverty that impacts Black communities in health. And education is key, right? We know that there is this medical mistrust and within our BIPOC community, along with this perceived discrimination that goes with that hand in hand. So how do we work together to create a communication pathway for our BIPOC patients in order to help them, to educate them, to provide them not just education, but health information and literacy, which is also very prevalent? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think I'm going to connect back to a point that I talked about, the professional pipeline. So growing up, I didn't know what public health was. Had no idea about it. In my mind, I wanted to be a doctor. And it wasn't until I got into undergrad and one of my mentors shared with me, there was a program that happened, and it was the Association of Minority Health Profession Schools. And this is every historically Black college and university who has a nursing program, a medical program, a veterinary medicine program, and they all came together for this annual conference. And I learned about careers that even as a college student, I didn't know anything about. And I think, as I've risen my career ladder, it gets lonelier in terms of seeing Black faces or brown faces around the leadership tables. And I think, if we can really invest in getting more representation into these fields, then it also can help create some of those pathways to trust. I think all of us have a duty and a responsibility that as we ascend to leadership roles, that we have to engage in things like this panel or do things in our local communities so that we're engaging with younger persons so that they get a chance to see us. Like, forget his politics, because I know that's questionable, but Ben Carson was somebody I looked up to growing up because of his medical prowess. And he was someone at that conference, lauded every year and brought, and he inspired multiple people to go into careers of public health, medicine, and other allied health fields. And so I think we've got to get more persons out there in the forefront. And there are some people in modern times, even like Dr. David Satcher, who was not only a CDC director, but also the US public health, Surgeon General. And people don't recognize that there are different career paths that are available to us. And if we can get more representation, I think that helps bridge gaps with Black communities.
Thank you, Chris. Would any of the other panelists like to share before we open up questions to others?
Yeah, I think one of the things that comes to mind is honoring BIPOC individuals' autonomy. So it's not us pulling them to us, we go to them. It's a lot of aspects of community psychology where you're going into their communities and asking them what they need, not us coming in and like, y'all need this. What are they lacking? What is working with them, and just being of a support. That's how you can build a trust, because if we're pulling them to where you need to come to us, they'll see that as performative. And we are people in this community that we like when people are doing the actual work and not saying what they're gonna do. So be about what they say they're gonna do. I think that's, like, to me, just based off my experience, is very essential.
Just to add to that, there's an organization that is doing just that, except they are all white. There's an organization that's a medical organization that is doing just that, and they are blowing up. They are going all over the place and going into communities, and they're hiring people that, they have their one or two, right? But overall, the organization is white. they have the money too, right? They have the money. And so getting the money to do just that would be amazing. That would be the dream. And an organization that has nutrition, that has a physician there, that has a psychiatrist there, that has, I mean, even a community garden to help to, to show, the importance of eating well and what that looks like, and has a counseling center. If we could do that and bring that to our communities, that would make a big difference too.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Sherry, because I think it's so important to encourage the community to come in. And I see what you're saying also, Gabrielle, but I feel like the community has to do their part as well. They have to come to the doctor. They have to get these physical exams. They have to come in. They have to. And maybe coming up with money, maybe make incentives for coming. I don't know, get creative with it. But like you said, we got to find this money. But I've come across websites like government funding. If you have a good idea, they'll give you some money. So I don't know, we got to come up with something, make these people come to the doctor. And of course, we can come out there to them as well, but they got to do their part. They got to get in. They got to get that appointment. That's the only way we're going to diagnose them and find out what's going on. That's the only way, with an examination.
So I'll jump in with one more comment. So one thing, a field of study that I learned about when I was in grad school is called community-based participatory research. And I think that brings together exactly what you all are talking about. And it was one of my first projects in grad school. It's an academic partner working as equal with a community partner with a timeline and a transition plan. So the project that I was a part of in St. Louis and North St. Louis City was St. Louis University School of Public Health working with a community partner called Hope Build on a project called the Garden of Eden. So it was addressing obesity prevention and nutrition education with a collaborative of churches. And over this 3-year project, while the researchers were the ones who initially put in for the money, and they were the ones kind of leading the charge, there was supposed to be intentional skill building so that at the end of the 3-year project, Hope Build was the one running the show and then actually going on with the continuity of funding and programs to take it in a sustainable fashion forward. So I think as we think about these community-based efforts, I think those are some of the avenues that can equally be joint funded by federal agencies, state level agencies, things of that sort, and really put the power in the hands of those community organizations who have the most reach to those communities.
Thank you, Chris. And I agree, right? When we talk about communities, we have to talk about empowering the people within the communities to be involved, right? It goes back to Gabrielle and coming in and assessing, not coming in and telling the community what we think they need, but letting the community have a voice that empowers them to want the community gardens, want to seek health, want more information, better diets and things like that. So thank you very much. So I'm going to stop asking questions and see if there are any questions from the audience. Any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have a question. So for folks, first off, thank you all so much for coming and giving this talk. This has been so wonderful. But we have a few students on the call who I know are aspiring to do a lot of the work that you all are currently doing and will be in grad school next semester and beyond. And so could you talk about what the challenge was for you as you were even thinking or entertaining going into the profession, because there's not a lot of representation. You know, even Chris talked about this, which was not seeing yourself in the field, and that can be difficult. So the whole concept of imposter syndrome and of the like. So could you all maybe speak to that and how you overcome that?
My family personally, my parents, who were first generation students, made it the expectation in our family that we would pursue, not necessarily a degree per se, but the most amount of education that would empower us to do what our passions and what our skill sets led. So as I left Tuskegee, you know, I had a lot of conversations with my parents, and I knew I wanted to go to grad school, didn't really quite understand exactly what going to public health school meant. So it took me making some connections, and some of those were white allies, helping me understand what the field of public health meant. Once I got there, imposter syndrome hit absolutely. I remember being in a class and wondering how all of my white colleagues understood things so well. And what I found out later is that some of their white colleagues had given them former tests. So they were just regurgitating information as opposed to actually learning it and figuring out how to apply it. And so we saw a paradigm shift as we graduated from grad school, because once they had only learned to regurgitate information, so those of us who had learned to apply it got the amazing career opportunities that led us to the CDC and other, international organizations. But I think, as we think about kind of path forward, one thing that I had no idea about were fellowships and internships. And that was my saving grace to get not only my grad school funded, but also to kind of get down the career path that now builds my resume and CV. So there was a fellowship that is no longer around now, but it was intentionally for African-American students in public health who were seeking to understand health disparities. That paid for my entire grad school at St. Louis University. Then as I was leaving there, I got a job with the National Cancer Institute. And then sometimes you just have to have those letters behind your name. And the next thing you know, that opened me up for another CDC fellowship. And that was a 3-year CDC fellowship started by David Satcher when he was a director, to get and train public health leaders. And so I did a 3-year management fellowship, and that really kind of set me up for this. So while you may not, some people know exactly what they want to be when they grow up. The only thing I know is I want to be retired someday, and make a difference somewhere along that journey. But for those who don't know what they want to be, consider fellowships, consider training opportunities. They bring you in, they invest in you, they give you a lot of support to actively build those skills, to make some mistakes and learn from those mistakes without penalty. And then they catapult you oftentimes into pipeline programs or opportunities. So all of that, and I'd be willing to share any more if people have specific questions.
All right, and to answer your question, Barrington, I think it's really important. You got to know that anything is possible. There's really no such thing as you can't do it or you can't be that. There's really no such thing. You got to keep going. You got to stay up late. You got to wake up early. You got to put in that work. There's always a way. So even me being a post-bac student, my undergrad was in general studies. That had nothing to do with medical, but I have this opportunity now and I'm learning so much. I just watched a surgery up close and personal like 2 weeks ago. I'm learning, it's always a way. So it's really important just to always know your resources, go after it, ask questions. It's always a way. Just keep knocking, the door will open 100%.
I wanted to say that my experience has been a little different. So I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is predominantly white city, but then I grew up in Ann Arbor and Detroit is predominantly Black. So me and my sister, we joke and we say our dad growing up was the Malcolm X. And so he knew the environment me and my sister were in and wanted us to, embrace our Blackness, being that we were usually the only Black person in the classroom. Then when my mom and we moved to Detroit, it was Black power. Like you had you come into our elementary school, it was just, Rosa, Madam, all of that. And it was just this bleeding of love for our skin colors in all tones, flaws and alls, right? And I say that to say because I was pretty used to being the only one, right? But that doesn't mean that your body doesn't feel like different, othered, and it doesn't feel good all the time, right? But I use that my personal story as fuel to come into it. I think because my environment growing up was predominantly Black, I focused on my gender being a woman. And then when I went to college at Western Michigan University, it was predominantly white. So then it was this, I started really appreciating the intersectionalities of me being Black and me being a woman. And then when those things cross, what does that mean for me? And then learning more about that, you dive in deep about mental wellness. And so imposter syndrome is real. And when you go into grad school, there's going to be so many things that challenge you. But I would just say embrace the challenges, because you're going to grow and be better out of that. But when those challenges happen, remember what brought you to grad school. I'm going to be transparent. If I did not have to go to grad school for counseling, I probably wouldn't have. But I'm good for it. I'm happy for it. I do love learning. But, it's a lot. So I'm going to just embrace that it is a lot. But when those down times, remember your story. And the second biggest thing I would say is find your community. I am so grateful for my family. I'm so grateful for my friends, but even find that community that's in the trenches with you, them classmates, them group projects. If you're at an internship, your peers, because sometimes even explaining it to your family, it's like they not there. So they're like, yeah, that is tough. And that might not sit, that's not enough for you. So go find your community that's in there with you, that, man, I had a client today, and they can help you talk through that imposter syndrome, and you can help them when they're feeling it, because it's gonna come.
And just to add on to what Gabrielle said, your community is going to move you and push you through. And also, so social media wasn't as predominant as it is now, but this energy on comparison. What you are doing has nothing to do with anybody else in your classroom. Focus on, unless they're going to help you and support you, don't compare yourself to anyone else. Do not compare yourself to anyone else. That is a waste of your time and energy. Focus on your passion, your drive. Let that be at the forefront. And if you have other folks that you can collaborate with that build each other up, do that. But comparison in classroom, comparison on social media is a lot. If you can, stay away from social media in your graduate program if you need to. If it's not filling you up, then it's not helping you. Be mindful of what is going through your timeline. Everybody is, some of the students in here know me, Snapchat or Snapchat. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Like, if it's not bringing you laughter and peace and kindness, you don't need it. It's not feeding your soul.
Thank you, Sherry. So there was a question that came through the chat. Sometimes there's a lack of mistrust among the African-American community. Have you considered using introductory or tangible ways to get around that?
So yeah, I can speak to my own experience. So one of the projects I work with, when I first started working for the National Cancer Institute, I was responsible for cancer prevention programs in the state of Missouri and Southern Illinois. And in literally 2 blocks around the corner from where I lived, there was a church who was actually funded by the state health department to do some initiatives in their community, which collaborated and connected right to Ferguson area. And when I shared this with my supervisors at the National Cancer, they're like, oh, that's the perfect group to go and work with. And so the first time I met with that group, we vibed because, Black church to Black church, we were all together. And then when it came time to talk about the project, I remember their response was, this sounds like a really great program and we need to pray about it. So when I took that back to my boss, and she's like, they got to do what? And well, how long is that going to take? And I said, however long it takes them to give us a response. And so we had to be patient. And while we were patient, we were also present and active. So what else can we help you with? What else can we help you achieve? So that it shows that I'm not just here for the National Cancer Institute, I'm actually here for you. And if you can overcome that barrier, then they actually begin to trust you. And they're like, okay, like he's not just full of crap. So we're actually going to consider this program that he's bringing to us. And it really helped. And then we were funded again by the state health department, and this time together, but it really took time. And sometimes the academics of things it pushes people beyond the humanness. And I think we have to always center around that connection, especially when it comes to health and wellness.
Thank you. No, go ahead, Gabrielle.
Oh, okay. I think for me, I can only think of like more of on a one-on-one basis. So with clients who are African-American, using Black African-American psychological strengths within the sessions. So, we laugh when it's appropriate time to laugh, use music, dance, anything that they have a passion or have an interest, hobby, to bring it into session when we have to talk about difficult times. If it helps you escape, like, as you can see, this is a studio. I love photography. That helps me escape. So integrating how mental wellness can be kind of creative in session, I think has helped lower, like, okay, what I thought counseling was might be a little different. I might come back. Let's see. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question. Lack of access to health insurance nationally is a problem. How is the situation locally? Has Obamacare helped more people have access, or do we really need universal health care? I'll open that up to any of the panelists.
Oh, I could go on for days about this one. So, okay. So having worked for the federal government, my personal belief is that we do need a universal healthcare system. And I'll speak to it from the perspective of Kenyon College. So if Jacky has not shared with you all about Kenyon College, this is a very privileged institution, and we need to own that privilege where we are. It costs approximately $74,000 a year to go to this institution for an undergraduate degree, and we have many of our students who pay outright for that degree. As we think about the healthcare system that we have set up here at our center, students do not have to pay for the services we provide them because it is folded into their tuition. So when they present for care, health or counseling, all you have to do is schedule an appointment. And if we were able to replicate that at the national level to take away the financial barriers, because all insurance plans are not the same. All insurance benefits are not applicable across state lines, depending on what your need is. One of the first students that I worked with here at Kenyon College was a student athlete who had access to all of our insurance plans. And that's another thing, every student on this campus is required to have insurance. So this student had 3 insurance plans, had an injury as an athlete, and still ended up with $27,000 in debt that got passed along to a collections agency because no one coached this student on how to apply those benefits. And that student was not a white collar student. It was a blue collar family, someone who is now starting off life with credit agencies coming after them, impacting their credit. And all of that could have been circumvented, in my opinion, if we had a universal approach to just provide care. I know other countries, they approach it from very different ways, that everybody has a baseline coverage, and then you can opt into some other, kind of preferred provider networks or things of that sort. But I think, we spend, at least 7 years ago when I looked this up, it was $2.6 trillion a year on healthcare costs in the United States. If you flip that and spend it toward prevention or equal access, you will significantly reduce the amount of spending that we have and see greater health outcomes. So while I think Obamacare is a great start, I think the politics of things have gutted it from the impact that it could have for hate of the man himself who it's named after. So I think we really have to think about changing that system here, because if not, we're really going to put persons, that's a disparity in itself. Beyond the access, it's the cost on the back end that people then get jeopardized with.
I think when we talk about health disparities, right, we don't necessarily fold into the conversation the financial disparity that is a burden to BIPOC communities or just our vulnerable communities who don't have the income. So thank you for sharing that. So I do want to ask, we've mentioned a lot about mental health, and we talked a little bit about grad students. What about our undergraduate students? What are some resources that are available on our college campuses for undergrad students who may be first-year students and haven't had those difficult conversations or may not have that support at home to seek assistance for mental health issues?
I would encourage, kind of along the lines what I've said earlier about cultivating your community. If you have an advisor, so it's really easy to talk about when we're doing good. It's real easy to do that. But when we're doing bad, and I'm not even talking about, it's an off day today. When we're doing real bad, it's really challenging to speak to anyone, let alone an advisor, someone who is essentially like a stranger to you. So we want to honor that, right? But feeling bad, feeling down, sad is just another feeling like happy, like all the positive ones. And we should honor those not so comfortable feelings as well. And and find some camaraderie that we all feel those things, right? So really encouraging, like, speak to a teacher that you trust. If you have anybody that you feel comfortable with, share with them, and hopefully they can guide you to come to whatever college you're at, wellness center. And just have a little discussion. If you are nervous, maybe there's an opportunity where you can talk to somebody at their wellness center, like, these are my apprehensions. What should I do? What's the next steps moving forward? And wellness centers have to know that we have a duty to be transparent and let them know that they can do this at their own pace. It doesn't have we don't have to go right deep. We can go at the pace that the client wants to.
And to add on to what you're saying, Gabrielle, we need to remind these young kids, they're not alone. It's so many people suffering from mental illness. It's more popular than what they probably think. They're not the only ones. So maybe even advertising it more, like the statistics on who's suffering from anxiety, depression, or anything. And maybe just putting up more posters about how popular it is. It's really popular, I think, at least. A lot of people I come across just working at the pharmacy, just a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of people are on some type of Zoloft or antidepressant, some type of medication. It's really popular. So maybe if we push that on the campus a little more, then they'll be a little bit more open to talk to somebody about it, their teacher, like, hey, that's me. So.
And you kind of raise a great point, Jessica, where it doesn't have to, we're waiting for clients to come to us. Like, wellness centers can put on group sessions to honor that, hey, the pandemic did exuberate feelings of isolation, depression, anxiety, because we're home. A lot of your coping strategies might have been outside of the house, that you can't do that anymore. And so if it's making it hard to individually do some work with yourself, wellness centers can put in group sessions where it's like, hey, here's a group session on how has the pandemic affect you? And then on top of that, if you have lost loved ones in this pandemic, you're not only grieving the loss of how your life was prior, but you're also grieving people who are sick or you have lost.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. So I'm a graduate student at Dominican. I went through undergrad, went straight to grad school, graduated in May. Thanks. But I have a question just as far as being like Black and dominantly white spaces. I've been in like situations, at least like at my internship, and I know that this is something I'm most likely going to be dealing with my entire life. But just being Black and dominantly like white spaces, or even Hispanic or Latinx spaces where people can micromanage you and like focus on the work that you do more than the white person next to you, or more than a Hispanic person next to you. And I feel like it's because we Black. But just like in situations like that, how do you manage like your emotions and like your attitude? Because one thing about me, I'd be like, like, you're not texting me this much as the other person. So what is this? So just in situations like that, how do you deal with like the workspace and your own personal emotions?
So brilliant question. I think number one, a healthy boundary. So it's a job. And if you were to drop dead and die, that job is going to move on without you. So you should honestly keep that kind of mentality, even though you're invested in what you're doing, that if a space becomes so aggressive toward you that it is no longer adding to you and your growth, then walk away. And I think, when you're in some of those places that are potentially toxic or aggressive towards you, it's about learning either directly or vicariously some of those lessons that you can carry forward with you. So I remember my first job, the one in the National Cancer Institute, my boss was a micromanaging white lady, and she just could not get some of the things that we talked about. And so while I used that space for a year and a half to learn what I could, to gain what I can from that, I knew from one of the first conversations where she was micromanaging me that I was leaving. And in my mind, I started developing my exit strategy, because I said, I'm not going to be able to hit my full potential or the full impact that I want to have in the community under her. And that's okay to recognize, because I hold no ill feelings against her, but I had to come to that realization so that I could empower myself to leave when an opportunity came, because so many people get connected to careers or titles or positions that you're afraid to walk away. Like, I walked away from the federal government after a 12-year career and never looked back. And trust me, the federal government system move on, and I have moved on too, and I've been much better for it.
And just to add on to Chris, another piece is.
Unmute yourself, Sherry.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. I was thinking I could get through without that happening. To add on to Chris, and just to say, and this is only if you feel comfortable and you have mentors and friends and family and supervisors that support you, other supervisors that may not be that supervisor, simply saying, I'm noticing, Gabrielle, that some of your responses look a little bit different than my counterpart here. Can you help me understand what's going on with that difference? And then have them sit on it and you go on back to your business. Just that one question, leaving it with them, and then you create that exit strategy. Always having an exit strategy, because oftentimes there's a reason why, right? They're doing that. And if they can't address it like, oh, I didn't mean to, I'm so sorry, I'm going to work on it, I'm going to change. Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. And it's actually intentional. They don't value you.
And just to go with what everybody said, and then after that, honor those frustrations, those anger, whatever you're feeling right now, because it doesn't feel good. Go to your community and vent if you want to, cuss up a storm if you need that, if you need some spiritual healing, if that works for you, but don't push it down, and don't view it as it's happening because of you, right? It's an external issue, and I would say emphasize your self-care, and don't push your feelings down with that.
That is perfect. Jessica, did you have something to add?
I did. It's a little bit in a different direction, because at the end of the day, lead by example. That's my advice. But I feel like you know what you're doing, Miss Lapree, because you've came so far. But lead by example. You don't have to leave the job. I'm sorry, Chris, but you don't have to leave. You don't have to leave. You lead by example. You prove them wrong. They're prejudiced at the end of the day. They think they see a Black person, a strong Black smart woman, and they're intimidated, or they just think the wrong thing. Just prove them wrong at the end of the day, like you've been doing. Continue, keep up that good work.
Or even asking yourself, what do you want to do? If you lead by example, that's gonna be hard, but okay, we doing this. If you gonna plant your extra strategy, that's gonna be hard too, but okay, we doing this. So you got these two options, and weighing the pros and cons of both, and proceed with whatever you choose to.
So making a holistic decision that leads to your own mental health at the end of the day is kind of what I'm hearing all the panelists say.
Yeah.
So with that, as BIPOC healthcare workers, how do you take care of yourselves? How do you remain so resilient in the field that you have this passion and love for, and how do you stay there?
Tunnel vision, for sure. Tunnel vision, just not giving up. You just have a goal, you stick to it. You pick something you're passionate about. I'm passionate. I'm really a people person. I'm so nice. People at work, my coworkers tease me about being a brown noser, but really I just care. I'm really a nice person. So, but I care about people. I want to see people in better health. I want people to know how to take care of themselves. I want to spread all this good knowledge. So just tunnel vision to get in a position where people can hear me.
For me, okay. For me, it's a Nina Simone quote that comes up when she was explaining, about Blackness, and honestly, it's not a choice for me. That's what it feels like. I am in this business to make other BIPOCs curious enough, persuade them enough to learn about themselves, to understand what they love and bring it out. Because white supremacy does a great job of making us feel like we have to go find ourselves, like we lost it when they stole it. But it's never lost. We just got to get aware of what we've already had. And when I fell in love with my Blackness and the Black community and the flaws, the flaws and alls, the beauty of it, through the pain, through the struggle, it made me appreciate Indigenous and other people of color and all marginalized individuals. And then when you put the power of viewing it in like a holistic way where the mind affects the body and the body affects the mind, and all together that affects the spirit, right? That motivates me. So even in your down times where you're like, oh God, I don't want to do this assignment. I don't want to do, I just ain't feeling it, right? That is what motivates me. But at the same time, if I'm down, if I'm tired, rest, self-care, it will get done the next day. And I'm still learning that to this day. When the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, when those events happened, I was sad. And even when you try to get happy, it was just not working because it was a racial trauma that happened. I had to honor that and just claim that I was down and I needed to take some days out. And then once I'm rested and feel energized, I'll get back to it. So with everything I just said, but also taking a breather and resting in whatever way that looks for me.
I have faith in my background. And so I truly wholeheartedly believe that God created me to do this work right now in this season of my life. That's what I know so far. And so that empowers me and infuses me with strength. I'm also a crier, so I can just cry, and I try to make sure that I'm crying a couple of times a week, just because that's the way I release. That's a part of my self-care that helps to get me through. I also I love the field. I love supporting individuals. I love seeing individuals heal. And then I had to reevaluate my bank account when COVID hit, and I had to see, how do I invest in something? And I'm on a payment plan on a workout bike that has really been helping me, and I'm okay with that. It is completely okay. But I had to reevaluate my bank account to make sure that I did that, because I needed another outlet for me to get through.
Yeah, and for me, it's a healthy boundary. I think similar to Gabrielle, I had to learn, and it's an active learning process to put it down. Especially when you get to certain leadership roles, there's this assumption that you're always available. Nope. My office hours are from 9 till 5. Don't call me. It better be an emergency. Somebody better be dying, or something better be burning down. And if it's not that, then I can have the agency. And I've had to do this a lot during the pandemic, is to, oh yeah, I see that phone ringing and I see that VP's name on there, and I'm gonna let them leave a voicemail. And then I'll listen to the voicemail, and then I'll determine if this is something that can wait until the next day or if it needs to be addressed now. But putting those things down, having an active community, one of the things I lost when I left the state of Michigan, I had a crew of guys that I would hang out with. We were all professional in our own right, but none of us worked together. So we put down every bit of doctor title, professor title, CDC title when we came together, and we were just Black men. And I found that with Jacky's husband and some of my friends here at Kenyon College, like, just to be able to put that stuff down and authentically be yourself, and sometimes to say some inappropriate things in a safe space, just to get that stuff up out your system, because if not, it's going to bubble out one way or the other. But I mean, just being real, and for me, like, I love spending time with my wife and my daughter. I love doing things like riding my bike, where it's just me by myself out in nature. I love cooking, and I love hosting people. So investing in those things when I put it down after hours has really helped me maintain myself.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. I'd like to personally and most humbly express our gratitude from Dominican University that you took time out of your day to have this discussion that is so well needed among BIPOC communities. I am going to hand it over to Jacky to close us up, but thank you for a wonderful, lively discussion that I hope we can continue as well.
Thank you, all of you. And as Tamara shared, we are just so grateful that you were able to share your time with us today. And I really want to encourage you all to continue to have these conversations beyond just today. This is not a conversation that should remain here in this hour, in this Zoom video, right, which will be posted on our Center for Cultural Liberation's YouTube channel. But I'm just so grateful that we had this opportunity. And I want to encourage you all to, again, join us on the Music and Food Festival tomorrow, which will be virtual. I posted the Zoom link in the chat. It is another opportunity to heal. We are in too many Zoom meetings, doing too many things. Just listen to some music, put everything down, and just don't do anything. Just listen to it. And hopefully win a raffle. So, alrighty, thank you all. And I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your day.